Tonight, the Sinestro Corps gets itself a new leader, and the nepotism has never been stronger. Wonder Woman, in her infinite compassion, gives the benefit of the doubt to the clearly evil goddess trying to trick her. And it's the issue of Harley Quinn we've all been waiting for, the one where she beats the ever-loving piss out of the Joker. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 233 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and a little bit of a lighter week this week. Not as light as it theoretically could be, but only 10 comics to talk about. So I can spend some time here to sit and talk and say whatever I want at the beginning and try to make it a whole thing. I have nothing to say. I have absolutely nothing to say. One could argue I never have anything to say, but here I especially don't. And that is because looking at this week, 10 comics that came out, there's no A-listers. That sounds bad, especially because we have like Wonder Woman this week. But let me just list it off real quick. Let me just tell you the books that we're covering. This week, roughly alphabetical order, we have Dr. Fate, Harley Quinn, Martian Manhunter, Poison Ivy, Cycle of Life and Death, Robin, Son of Batman, Secret Six, Sinestro, Titans Hunt, Wonder Woman, and then our weekly series, Batman and Robin Eternal. Now, I'd love to say that out of those, you have things like Harley Quinn, which is the 25th issue. It kind of does some big stuff with Joker. It's leading into Suicide Squad, sort of multimedia tie-ins. Wonder Woman, she's part of the Trinity. Feels like that should be a big thing with her. Titans Hunt, that's a Road to Rebirth title. That feels like it should be a big thing. But it isn't. It just isn't. Like, I cannot stress to you enough how bad I would be in advertising, how absolutely awful I am at selling you to say, you must see this episode, because it's all gonna change. Like, no, this is just a week of DC Comics. These are books that need to happen in order to get to the weeks where everything changes. I'd love to say they're more than that, but they aren't. So, enjoy this episode where almost nothing happens. I mean, look, if you're enjoying the characters, any of those books I talked about before, it's not a bad week. It's not like all of a sudden Scott Lobdell did some fill-in issues on every title and they all now suck. No, they're fine. They're as they always have been. It's just not big event-wise. So forgive me if during the books I don't come in with the same enthusiasm. I'm using it here in the intro, and that is all I have. So let's just, I guess, get into it. Where to lead off if there's no A-listers? Probably a Bat book. I'll pick it at random. Robin, Son of Batman, number 9, written and art by Patrick Gleason. So, technically, if you follow the through line, Robin War just happened. But that was written by Ray Fawkes, and then there was also a follow-up issue by Ray Fawkes. The last Patrick Gleason issue that this is pretty much picking up from is issue number 6, where Damian separated from Maya and Goliath and is off in Gotham now doing his own thing. So we see he's in Gotham, and he goes to the youth center that I guess this is a little bit set in the past of Batman, where he's watching a bunch of kids play out in the snow. One of them falls off of this play set, which is made out of all of Batman's old trophies. Go read Batman if you're curious. And as one of them falls, Damian reaches out. He's about to jump in, but we see Bruce, who at this point is still amnesiac, catches the kid, and he's looking at the kid like, "Oh, I got you, son. Don't worry about it." And Damian goes all emo. And we see he breaks into Bruce's bedroom at night and he goes, "Father, I am truly alone, but I cannot allow your legacy to languish in the hands of unworthy pretenders. So I'm going to get out there and I'm going to go protect Gotham. Bye." So he heads out, and we see that the very first thing he comes across, I can never remember the name of this group. He calls them Bat Freaks, but it's people who were harmed by Batman in some way. The one that keeps coming back is the guy who's got a batarang lodged in his head, and he just occasionally says random words. But either way, they're freaking out because I guess they were stealing from a flea market. They see the shadow of Batman. They're like, oh, crap, we're screwed. What is he doing at a flea market? That's insanity. So they look back one more time and they realize, wait a minute, hold on. That's not Batman. That's Robin. We can take Robin. Screw Robin. He's no problem. And then Robin just comes in, like, absolutely not holding back. He's breaking jaws, and he's going for it. They have this running joke of how one of them is trying to protect a lamp that he stole named Lampington III. Don't worry about it. So either way, yeah, as they're continuing to fight, one of them recognizes Robin, like, hey, wait a minute, you're the Robin who caused Squish here, which I guess is his name, to form together as like 3 different people, and now they look like a weird Clayface amalgamation. So I got you. I'm going to beat the crap out of you. And he's like, yeah, you can try. So he basically just grapples them all up, ties them up, and is causing them to float down into the Gotham Harbor, because this whole thing has been an air fight. And as he's dropping down, he's like, wait a minute, there's a light coming from the bottom of Gotham Harbor. That's exactly where the boat that nobody was in all the way back at the beginning of New 52. What? And so he dives down in there, and we see that there is 2 people, one going by the name Wonder Fox and the other going by Snow Fox, who are on some sort of task there to wipe all the computers clean, do what they need to do, and like destroy the bones of Morgan Ducard, which was the previous nobody. And as they get down there, they're like, all right, great, cool, we did it, let's bounce. And then they realize, oh no, someone else is here, it's Robin. He's just holding his breath, like he doesn't have any gear. But when we see these 2, they are in almost identical gear to Maya. She, the nobody setup. So they jump in there like, haha, Robin, just the guy we're looking to see. We'll take you out. And they do a whole bunch of jokes about how they have acronyms for their tech, like the Ossicle Hampering Impulse Oscillator, aka Ohio, because why not? And as the fight's continuing, they are able to use the tech to cause hallucinations for Robin, which causes him to see a ghost version of himself slashing at him under the water, a zombie version of Ducard. He starts to swim up to the surface, and they say, like, oh, you're alone, you're ruined, blah, blah, blah. And as he gets up to the surface, he sees a hallucination of Batman saying, don't listen to them, you're never alone. But I'm going to call them nobodies, hold Damian underwater saying, nope, 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 we're going to keep you, we're going to drown you down here, that's what's going to happen. And as they look up at the top of the water, they see another giant shadow of a bat, but this time it is Goliath who has returned in, and he just dives down, takes these guys out, throws them down to the bottom, and Damian latches onto his back, and they manage to fly out. So they get the airborne as these guys are on some level of hoverboards or something out of nowhere, and Damian tells Goliath to use what seems to be like the canary cry, like Black Canary's power. It causes some sort of sonic blast that disrupts the water itself to cause them to lose stabilization, and they're unable to attack any further. So at that point, he's like, okay, all right, what do you guys want? And he's like, oh, where is she? Where's Maya Ducard? And it's like, Maya, she left. Like, what do you want with her? How do you know that name? And so they explain themselves, and they say, we used to get hired by Maya. We were kind of like other things. She was wealthy, she was obsessive, and so she hired us constantly to do stuff. But then she met up with you, and last thing we heard is that she said that she was convinced not to be nobody anymore. She wanted out. She hired us for one last job to wipe all traces of her father from Gotham Harbor, and then she bounced. And we don't like that. We want to know what's up with it. And Damian's just like, well, she wanted to bail. You guys should be respecting that. Get out of here, or else I'm going to beat the crap out of you. And they're like, yeah, you think so? We're going to bring her back into the fold. You can't stop us. And then they leave. Like they realize, like, oh, we're not going to win this fight here, but we're just going to bounce. So Damian and Goliath go up to the top of Gotham. We see him looking over the moon. He sees Talia's face there. And then he pops open his Robin communicator tracker thing. It turns out there is a live video feed of Maya. She's back home. She's with some level of family or something like that, and she just seems to be enjoying herself. So Goliath is like, snorting, whimpering over at Damien. He's like, I know, but she's happy, she's safe, we gotta let her do her thing. So as they're flying over Gotham, Damien says, all right, I'm glad you came back, it's super cool, I trained you well, but it's dangerous for you to be here, so if you want to be a part of this, you got to do it right. And they set down on a rooftop, specifically with the bat signal, and they do the oath. They do the thing of holding up the hands and joining in on Batman's crusade. And Goliath joins in. He says, as much as you can say the oath. And Damien's like, all right, cool, let's go to the Batcave. And we see, arriving back in the Batcave, he introduces Titus the dog, Pennyworth the cat, and Bat Cow. All of them meeting Goliath. And he says, all right, let's get to work. That's the issue. So this is Patrick Gleason's last issue on this, and, I always kind of associate Patrick Gleason's art style with Damien. It's been that way since the beginning of Batman and Robin. Like, he's just kind of always been around there. So having this be the quote-unquote finale, I don't know. It's okay. It's an all-right ending, and it does a good job of setting up the next arc, but I kind of just liked it when it was like, okay, everyone goes their separate ways. Like, you can let the next writer and artist handle Goliath coming back. I don't think that's a big deal. There are pages in this I like. The intro is also great. No problems there. I just think that we had such a perfect ending for his run with everyone going their separate ways. And we didn't need this issue. It's an epilogue, but it's also like setting up future thing. I don't know. I think this could have done well just being a Ray Fawkes issue. But God only knows if he would have actually done this one. So whatever. Either way, I'm going to say that this one is I'll give it a flat 7. It's inoffensive. It doesn't really do much. It's just, like I said, kind of an epilogue issue. It's just moving the pieces. So it's like, okay, we sent Goliath away, but we want him back now. And we're establishing that Robin is going to stay in Gotham to do the stuff he's going to do. So yeah, it's fine. It's just not an amazing issue either. Sinestro number 20, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Brad Walker. So last issue we had Sinestro coming up against the Pale Bishop, the main dude, and this issue is literally just the fight. It's stretched so thin. So we open up with Sinestro fighting against him, and he does this monologue of basically saying, everyone thinks that the Sinestro Corps is without fear. And like myself, I am without fear. And, Green Lanterns feel willpower. It's weird that Sinestros don't feel fear. But that's the thing. I do. Like, it's not something that I have given up. I walk amongst nightmares, and I take it on the nose. Like, I do whatever I need to do here in order to maintain my control over fear, which means experiencing it over and over again. So we see that he sends all the Manhunters in on like a suicide bombing run. They just immediately charge after Pale Bishop, explode, and they're like, is that it? And Sinestro's like, no, of course it's not it. So he comes out, he's even angrier than before, and he starts zapping Sinestro with his anti-emotional energy beam or whatever. And he's like, yeah, as it hits me, I'm scared. Like, that's what it does. That's what his beam does, is it forces you into your emotions so deep that you want to give into the abyss. You want to stop and like say no more, please, and just let it all out. And we cut down to people on Earth that are part of the Sinestro Corps, Superman, Wonder Woman, all them. They're zooming around. We see a bunch of humans are falling prey to the anti-emotional energy, but a lot of the heroes are more focused on, we got to protect the civilians, we got to do what we can as best we can. So there are these giant ships that Superman and Wonder Woman are taking care of. Arkillo they're saying like, hey, come join the fight, get up here, let's beat some stuff up. And he's like, I have to protect these puny, pathetic humans because they like me down here. And as one of the anti-emotions comes in, he just rips them in half, just straight up tears their head off. So we go through Sinestro's fears, and we basically just see all the traumatic stuff in his life. We see the death of Aaron Sur. We see the death of Corrigar at the hand of the First Lantern. We see him getting kicked out of the Green Lantern Corps, and then I'm not so much sure this is his fear or whatever, but it's the moment where he gave in to Parallax at the end of Jeff Johns' run and killed all the Guardians. And he's like, yep, all right, but that's all my stuff, but I'm only connected to the Pale Bishop now, which means it's a two-way street. And so he sees the Pale Bishop back when he was a Guardian, and all the other Guardians came around to the emotional spectrum. They were looking at like the wellspring of the emotional energies, and this particular Guardian freaked out a bit. He saw its energy and the potential in it, and he was scared, and so he ran away. And as he left the Guardians, he gave up all of his emotions. He's like, no, this is the right way to do it. He kind of like self-radicalized himself. But the biggest thing that stuck with him was the fear of emotion. And Sinestro was like, that's my in. So as the Pale Bishop is saying like, oh, submit, you yield to the paling, Sinestro's like, I'm sorry, was that a stutter? Did you just stutter? Are you afraid? Are you afraid of something here? And Sornik, who's watching all this from the side, is like, get him, Dad, you got it. So he basically points out and says like, yep, well, you looked into the void, and you know what they say, the void stares back. So down on Earth, we see all the people who are connected to the Yellow Lanterns. They're down on Earth, and they're struggling a little bit. They are able to pick up that something has happened. Like all of the all the anti-emotional people are like stopping for a second as they sense the Pale Bishop. Like they look up at the skies, which gives the Yellow Lanterns just enough pause for Black Adam to come in and say, kill them all, send them to oblivion. So they start attacking. I forget the one's name, but he's like, oh, Sinestro's not in this major bunch. Is he gone? And Lyssa Draga's like, no, he's cool, check this out. And so there's a giant projection of Sinestro, I guess sent from him, basically saying, hey, I'm fighting the Pale Bishop. I'm doing my thing. I need your strength. I'm a spirit bomb him. So everyone raises their rings up to the sky and they say the oath, and they send their energy up to Sinestro, who then blasts Pale Bishop with it with a super awesome multi-strike thing. And he knocks him out. He basically instills so much fear in him. And Sinestro continues on his earlier monologue by basically saying, yeah, fear is present in all the other emotions. It's within love and hope and anger and compassion. All of them are in my domain. And so I ignite the emotions inside him. And it's a major blast. It's a whole huge thing. Causes Sinestro to also pass out. Sornik comes in and just like, hey, yeah, you did it. You did great. And all that. And Sinestro's like, yes, but the cost was high. And he's like coughing. He's like all sick and ill now. He's like, oh, it took almost all of my power. And Sornik's like, well, you did that. You defended the Earth. Like, why the Earth of all places? And Sinestro says, if the Sinestro Corps is a force for order in the universe, then it was necessary. But I have to ask you to now take on this unbearable burden. So we go back down to Earth and we see that the ships are just falling out of the sky. Superman and Wonder Woman are trying to fly up to catch them. And all the Sinestro Corps members are like, bro, you got rings. Use your ring. You can handle a lot more if you do that. So they stop the ships from crashing down. A little girl who Arkilla was protecting comes up and hugs him and is like, oh, thank you, scary monster man. You saved us. And all the other heroes like Superman and Wonder Woman are like, I can't believe it. Sinestro saved the Earth. That's crazy. And Black Adam's like, yeah, sometimes we gotta sin us. We for you guys having so much morality on your shoulders, you sure don't put any faith in redemption. So then there's a voice from up high, and it's saying, oh, Earth is under protection of Sinestro Corps. We will not abandon you. And Arkilla's like, wait a minute. That's not Sinestro's voice. And down comes Sornik with a whole bunch of rings saying, burn like my power, Sinestro's might. So Sornik's taken over the family business, as to be expected. Yeah, I like it. I think the issue itself is kind of fine. Like, the fight is not particularly interesting. It's just they bomb the Pale Vicar, or Pale Bishop, whatever his name is. And then Sinestro gets hit, and then Sinestro hits back. And, like, that is the whole fight. That is all that really happens. But the implications, the afterwards, the stuff that happens as a result, I like the fact that Sornik is taking over Sinestro Corps. It's an interesting dynamic. I like that Sinestro Corps is in charge of defending Earth. It's basically taking over the Green Lantern's responsibility. I did think at a certain point here, wait a minute, isn't this the Red Lanterns? Don't they have control over this still? But I guess that just got wiped when their book ended. Like, how are they supposed to continue that? So, sure, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad issue. It just doesn't have a whole lot in it. It's just the big ending fight scene. So, yeah, I'd say this is an easy 7. I don't think it's a incredible book, but I liked it, and I like the future of where this book is going to go, even if it is only like 4 more issues. But I'm into it. I think this book has had a good direction for a little bit here now. So, 7. Titans Hunt number 5, written by Dan Abnett, art by Paulo Siqueira. So, last issue, this book is so hard to recap. There's so much happening. But the big thing that happened at the very, very end was Nightwing Grayson went off to get his Nightwing gear because he's like, I think it's important that I resume my costume in order to solve this mystery. So, this issue picks up where we've got Mal is in the past. This is some previous thing before everything else happened. We see he's been kidnapped by Mr. Twister, and there is a tower that is being built, and Mr. Twister's like, hey, get up to the top of the tower, it's time to sing, Harold. And he's like, yeah, I can't do that, I'm not gonna, why would I? And he's like, I can make you. And I don't quite understand Mr. Twister's power set yet, but he seems very confident in that. So as Harold is screaming / using his song abilities at Mr. Twister, he's like, well, you can't hurt me yet, but I can make sure I can hurt you. And this big hulking figure comes out of the tree line, dead set seemingly on breaking Harold. So fast forward to today, we're basically in the exact same situation. And except this time, Mal has no idea who Mr. Twister is. He's like, no, seriously, what's going on? What's up? And he's like, oh, you see, you and your little teenage hero friends forgot about me intentionally, just to spite me. But the memory's still buried in there. You couldn't get rid of all of it. And so I found that tiny little scrap, and I used that to get my way back in. So you'll all remember it soon enough. Don't worry about it. I just gotta push you a little bit, and I need you to help me do that. So Mal tries to dive after him, and he's like, no, I don't have a form yet. You still can't hurt me. But like, again, I have the ability to hurt you. And then we see this big hulking behemoth figure come out of the tree line and threaten to hurt him. So we go to the best I can describe it is a 1950s diner in this Hatton Corners town, and there's a police officer inside, and everyone's looking at the door like, oh my god, what is this? What's going on here? And it's Donna, Gar, and Dick, and they all walk in their costumes, and they're like, we're not here for any trouble, we just want some answers, all right? That's all we want. And Dick steps up to the police officer and just being like, did something happen to this town about maybe like 4 years ago? And this deputy is like, oh, well, I was just a kid back then. My dad was mayor. But now I'm a deputy, but we did have a scare back then. And he's very open with this information. He's like, yeah, we talked about this monster. It was like just a spooky legend way before that. It wasn't real. But then all of a sudden it was real. And that was 4 years ago. And, sheriff was looking all over the woods for it. Everyone was terrified. We had a curfew. And they turned that old shack, that old boat shack, into a clubhouse for us to all hide out in. And Dick is like, wait a minute, hold on, I'm remembering something here. And everyone has this flashback to all of the Titans, or at least Donna, Dick, Gar, and Arsenal. I'm blanking on his actual name. They're all there, and they're watching over some teenagers, and they're just like, oh, you gotta help us, it's a real monster. And they're like, we'll help you. We may not be the Justice League, but we're just as good, because we're Teen Titans. And everyone's like, okay. So we remember that. but then we all forgot it. It's almost like we forgot it on purpose. And they start theorizing. They're saying, like, why would we do that? Is it mass amnesia? Did we intentionally forget something? Like, what's up? And Dick is like, okay, well, someone or something wants us to forget all this. Let's keep pushing. And they ask the deputy, like, whatever happened to the beast? And it was like, it just disappeared. And I don't know. We never really talked about it again. It never came up. And it's like, all right, well, deputy, whatever it is, it's probably back. Keep everyone safe. We're going to go and handle it. Like, make sure people know there's no need to panic. Robin, Wonder Girl, and Aqualad are on the job. And Gar and Donna both look over like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Why did you say that name? So we cut over to Arsenal and Nar, who are, Narc, who have just arrived at I can't remember her name. It's God, that's going to bother me. The therapist, whatever her name is. Omen. Got it. I just can't remember her real name. So they arrive at the therapist's place, and Arsenal is like, hey, we don't need any weapons in there. You can leave your spear in the car. And he's like, I'm willing to bet we are going to need our weapons. And he's saying this all in like half caveman speak. He's like, go back, get your bow and your funny suit just in case. We see that already inside Omen's office is Dove. Hawk is out in the waiting room. They're in their civvies. And Dove is like, I don't know what's wrong with him. I found out that he got therapy from you like a long time ago, and he just loses control. And I'm not sure why he was seeing an addiction specialist, but like, I think that you need to see him. And she's like, okay, well, let me pull out my notes, see if I can find it. What was his name? It's like, oh, it's Hank Hall. And she's like, Hank Hall. He's here. He's out in the hallway. And we see that Lilith Clay, that's her name. We see that Hank is just like fighting back anger in the hallway until eventually he says Hawk, and he transforms into his Hawk form. And in through the door, right as he does that, is Arsenal and Narc, and they're like, oh, okay, we might actually have to fight, because immediately Hawk just tackles them out the door and starts throwing crazy punches. And Arsenal's like, what the hell is going on? I don't know what's happening. And he's like, oh, you did this. You know what you did. So Narc is already on the offensive. He's ready to fight. Speedy's just struggling to go get his bow. Walls are being broken through. Everything's insane. Eventually, Lilith and Dove make their way over to the wall. Dove's like, okay, well, what the hell's going on here? She transforms into Dove. And then Lilith's just like, wait a minute, Hank, Roy, Narc, and now Dove? What? And she suffers some sort of seizure thing related to all the memories, and she collapses. So we then go to the hospital. If you remember, Mal was stolen. Like, he was in an ambulance, he had it hijacked after his seizure, and it disappeared. So we see that whatever her name is, Bumblebee, use her superhero name. She is approached by this mysterious man who comes in and just like, okay, I'm going to need you to stay calm, Miss Duncan. And she's like, my husband vanished. Do you have any news? Are you with the police? And he's like, I just need to ask you a few questions. Now, when your husband was a member of the Teen Titans, and she's like, what the hell are Teen Titans? What are you talking about? He was never in a boy band. And it's like, well, you must know the Teen Titans. They're famous. And they like get escorted off to a side room. And she's like, what, the superheroes? The Scott Lobdell series? No, I don't know nothing about it. He was never a part of that. What are you talking about? It's like, your husband was a member of the original Teen Titans. She's like, nope, I don't want this. I'm pregnant, I'm cranky, and my husband is missing. I don't want anything here. And he continues on. He's like, Malcolm Duncan had metahuman gifts related to sound. You have to understand, like, why else would he have gotten so big so quickly here? And she's like, because he's talented. I think that much is obvious. And he's like, no, look, the original Teen Titans ceased to exist after a battle with Mr. Twister. They were erased from everyone's memories, but you saw Mr. Twister in that photograph. And she's like, how could you know that? And he's like, I know a lot. Look, he's back, and now he wants everyone else, including you and your baby. So let's talk. We then cut back over to Donna, Dick, and Gar as they're making their way out into the woods, and just Gar's like, no, but really, why did you call us those names before? Like, it just flowed so easily out of you. He's like, I don't know. It just, those were the names that I used back then. I think it just came out naturally. I don't know. We've forgotten the shared past, and we're trying to figure out why. And they look around at all these stones that are there. They're just in this wooded area, and they have a flashback and see them like floating up. And they're like, okay, hold on. This scene, even these rocks seem really familiar. What is going on here? But then all of a sudden they hear something out in the tree line, and wouldn't you know it, it's Goliath. Teen Titansville. He's here. So we cut over to Malcolm, who is basically beaten, bruised. He's on this random floor, and Mr. Twister's like, all right, well, sorry I had to do that to you, but you're not behaving, and you really got to just play along with what I'm saying here. And he goes for his phone to, like, text Karen, because that's her name, Karen. And he's like, nope. Look, the reception here is great, but not for phones. You are currently in a space where time and space are extremely thin, and therefore if you make some noise, it'll be heard across the entirety of the universe, and if you speak the right words, the universe will open up a door, and that's why you're here. And he's like, what do you even want me to do? He's like, last time my plan was you are going to open that door and you're going to call them in, but it didn't work out last time. You did end up stopping me, so this time we're going to do it right. And he reveals this massive, disgusting looking like bone organ. And he's like, you're my puppet. You have no choice in the matter. Play the damn music. And he's basically asked what the organ is. And he's like, you're weak. You haven't used your powers in a while. You need some assistance. That's fine. Everyone has trouble in middle age. So get on up there and do it. So Malcolm goes over, sits at the thing, and he's like, I don't want to do it, but something feels like compelling him to do it, and eventually he sings into this little horn that's accepting music, and we show that he's on top of this tower that existed before, and his music is sung for all to hear. It's the ending of The Grinch. So the one thing I've been saying about this book that I really like is the mystery aspect. And the mystery is still there. I'm good with it. Like, I still think it's setting up this solid mystery of, like, what happened? How exactly did the memories get deleted? Like, what's going on there? I think my only thing that I'm a little iffy on when it comes to the mystery is Mr. Twister. And it's not so much of who he is. It's that maybe, I could be wrong here, but it feels like if you have a better grasp on DC history, if you know Mr. Twister from before the New 52 era, then you already know what's going on. You already know, like, his power set. You know, like, the things that Mr. Twister is capable of doing. But for me, it feels like I'm missing out on a part of the story. It feels like, sure, I could go check the wiki and get details as to what Mr. Twister's actually about, but right now it doesn't even feel like he's left purposefully vague. It feels like you should just know him. And same thing with, like, that clubhouse in the Hatton Springs or whatever. Like, it feels like this is all pulling from something, but if you don't know it, we're not going to explain it to you. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll get a full explanation later on and character will just sit down and read a wiki page to me. But, like, I feel like if you come in with extra knowledge of pre-Flashpoint information, you're getting a little bit more out of this. I'm not going to verify one way or the other until we get to the end of the book. So, yeah, I think it's fine. I think it's a decent read. Like I said, the mystery aspect's still working for me. I'm going to give this one, I'll say a 7.5. I think it's very solid, and I'm still liking enough aspects of it that it's moving forward. I'm just hoping that this, like I said, by the end of it, we at least get a little something on, like, who the hell is Mr. Twister? Why is he here? More so than just his evil plan. I want to know, like, what's caused all this before, and what are Mr. Twister's, like, specific powers. So, 7.5. Wonder Woman number 49, written by Meredith Finch, art by David Finch. So, yeah, last issue was a whole bunch of lead up to a single page thing at the end, basically showing that baby Zeke was something wrong with him. Didn't even say what, just something was wrong with him. So this issue picks up and shows Wonder Woman's been called in, and baby Zeke is essentially just not waking up. He had a little bit of what looked like a seizure, and now he's just not responsive. So Hera and Wonder Woman go out and talk for a little while, and Hera's just like, he's a god. He's Zeus reincarnated to some extent. Like, he shouldn't be getting sick. That's not normal. Not like that. And he's basically like, look, I don't know. All of Olympus has been weird. Ever since you took on the role of God of War, like, and even before that, the firstborn Zeus disappearing, it's all been nuts. And you being God of War is, like, also not great because it's also led to all these other problems recently. And one of them was like, okay, well, I didn't know you felt that way, but continue. And she's like, I'm sorry, look, I'm worried about the baby. I'm worried about him. We got to take care of him. It's just like, okay, look, there's got to be some way to help heal a god. Like, what can we do? What can we take here? And she's like, I have no idea. I really, again, this isn't normal for gods, but Gaia. And she's like, what about Gaia? It's like, well, Gaia is the mother of all gods, and she's technically still around, but she's hidden because of her importance, because of what a big thing she is. We've hidden her temple away. I know where it is because I make yearly sacrifices and tributes and whatnot to it, like the old ways of caring for the Mother Earth and whatnot. But she's not really interactive. I don't know if she's going to do anything, but for our hope, let's say that she does. So we see Wonder Woman is told where the temple is. She goes down into the temple of Gaia, and she's like, hey, Gaia, I'm Wonder Woman, daughter of the Amazons, all that stuff. I need your help. We got a baby god, a child of the gods that's very sick. We need your help. And she just kneels down and prays, and hours pass, and she eventually loses hope, and she's just like, oh, this is gonna work. And she starts like punching at the statue in the temple. She's like, oh, wake up, come on, this is a baby, you're not gonna help a baby? This is like literally the most innocent thing that you could possibly do. Come on, help me. What about for Hera likes this baby, and Hera's been making you sacrifices for thousands of years. Gotta be worth something. And as she's like begging for help, we see that this being comes around the outside of the statue and just like, what the hell is this? Why are you in this temple? What's going on here? And the being introduces herself as Hecate. So anyone not familiar, goddess of like magic and witchcraft and whatnot, very much villain coded. She's got like lizard aspects to her and like spikes coming out of her head, and she's green, which again, villain colors. And she's like, look, Gaia's not going to help you. Gaia hates the Olympians after all the wars between the Titans and all that stuff. She's retreated. She's never going to come out here. And Wonder Woman's like, you got to have some way to talk to her. That's got to be important. And he's like, well, I mean, I don't have any way to talk to her, but I do know a way to help your problem. I was listening to that. And so come walk with me. And they do a little walk and talk, and basically says like, look, I think that I have something that might be able to help. If you're seeking Gaia's help, like, it's weird that you came down here alone. For some reason, you want to keep this secret, but do you want my help or not? And Wonder Woman basically is like hesitating. She's like, you seem really villain coded, and I really am not sure whether or not. And she's like, look, Gaia is probably not going to help you. And like, I am here offering up assistance. So whatever the problem is, like, do you care enough about this child that you are just going to sit there and pray for something that might never happen? Or are you willing to take a chance on something that is actually possibly here in front of you? And she's like, okay, well, if I were to accept your help, what do you need? And she's like, Hera has a scrying pool at the bottom. There are 3 orbs. I need those orbs. And Wonder Woman's like, oh, okay, that's no problem at all. Because like, Hera wants Zeke to be healthy as well, so I'll just go ask Hera, and then she'll give it to me. And immediately Hecate is like, nope, no, that's not going to happen, because you don't get it. You don't understand the gods and how, like, okay, long story short, Hera's never going to give up her power. She's never going to do anything that threatens that power for anything else. I know that you think that she cares about Zeke, but she's a bitch. And we see that Hecate like slices open her palm and uses blood magic to make a portal to show what Hera's currently doing. And we see that Zola is in bed with Zeke, and she's worried, and she's like, very sleep deprived. And Hera comes up and like takes the baby and is just like, you need sleep, and like uses like a hypnotic suggestion thing to knock out Zola. And she's like, I will take the baby with me. And she's like, okay, you do that. So Wonder Woman's like, she's freaking out. Hera's just trying to do what's best. This isn't as bad as it seems. And Hecate's like, look, Zeus was reborn into that baby. And if the baby dies, Zeus will continue to be reborn. He's a god. It's what happens. But you'll lose the baby. Like, that's absolutely going to happen if we don't get the baby help. Hera knows this. And Hera's not going to give up her immortal power for all of eternity to save this one temporary mortal baby. Like, it's not about saving Zeus, it's about saving this child. She ain't gonna care about it. If you want to do it, you got to go up there and you can't tell her. And she's like, oh, well, I won't lose Zeke, but you're really giving off villain. How do you know all this? Like, what is... I feel like you're just lying to me. And she's like, I am the goddess of witchcraft, not lies. So, accept or not, I don't care. And one of them hears a voice from Hippolyta, her mother, saying like, hey, I know you barely know Hera. Like, you know, you're just friends with her. If you do anything, you got to understand she will be jealous and feel betrayed. So you might be poisoning that friendship. But Wonder Woman's like, I gotta try. So we see she goes into Hera's temple or whatever, her room, sneaks in there and goes to the scrying pool. And she starts reaching down into it, trying to get to these orbs. When all of a sudden there's a noise at the door. It's Ares and whoever the goddess of peace is. And the goddess of peace is still just like, oh, Ares, please tell me how sexy I am again. And Ares is like, hold on. Did you hear something? And we see Wonder Woman has dived into the pool to be able to hide from them. And it apparently is like 100 meters deep. Like, it is ridiculously deep. And she's like, I don't know why I thought I could just reach these easily. So she dives down in. She's saying like, it's all for Zeke. Just keep reminding myself that it's super important. So she grabs the orbs, comes back up to the top. And she's like, all right, well, I might not have much time now. This is taking longer than I would have wanted. So she takes a curtain, puts it into a little rucksack, and starts walking out. She then comes across Apollo and Artemis, who are talking in the halls. And she's like, God damn, is everyone out in the halls tonight? So she has no place to hide. And Apollo is talking about, like, look, ever since I came back from the dead, I've had this new vision of, like, I want to have a child of my own, but I don't want to waste my magnificence on a mortal. So I have to convince her that she is worthy of me. And Wonder Woman's like, I'm not going to unpack that at all. But she accidentally activates a lever, which opens up a secret passageway that she walks her way down. And she's like, okay, well, I guess I'll keep on going here. So she talks to herself briefly about like how she doesn't really know the gods or anything like that. Meanwhile, we go to Olympus up top where Hera is caring for Zeke, and she's talking to Zeus, essentially. She's just like, oh, you know, I've always stood by you, supported you, even when you did those awful, horrible things and you constantly kept cheating on me and all these other things. You know, maybe I don't need you to be around. Maybe Olympus could use a queen for a while, you know? Maybe that's what's up. And Zola comes out and just be like, oh, man, I don't even remember falling asleep. Hey, Hera, what's going on with Zeke? Any change? And she's like, what? No, he's still good. Don't worry, we're just waiting on Wonder Woman, seeing what's up with her. And as Wonder Woman continues down the secret passageway, she starts smelling ash and metal and whatnot. She's like, oh, this must be a secret passageway to Hephaestus's forge. Like, all right, I'll pop out there. He's chill with me, no problems. And as he's making her way down the tunnel, all of a sudden she hears something behind her, and there is a giant cyclops there who grabs hold of her, knocks her out, and carries her deeper down into the temple. So what does all that mean? Beats me. I appreciate this issue for taking like it doesn't make Wonder Woman seem like an idiot in so much as she recognizes Hecate looks super duper evil and is like, I don't know if I should trust you. And she's like, well, I mean, I'm giving you an option here. And it does feel like kind of a deal with the devil sort of situation. So I appreciate that, where it felt like she was backed into a corner. But at the same time, they're not playing it just like, no, you seem like a very trustworthy god who's been hiding out in this temple that nobody should know about anyway. I'll do whatever you say. So yeah, no, it's a decent enough issue. I will say it. I think I said this last issue as well, because that one was dominated by the Dr. Poison stuff. It feels very much like we don't have enough time here at the end of the New 52 to do another full arc in the way that the Finches would like to. So this feels very much like a much smaller scale sort of thing happening. Maybe it'll turn into something bigger. Maybe it will last the whole of the remaining 3 issues this book has after this, but I'm much more inclined to think that this is going to be wrapped up next issue. We might get whatever Apollo was talking about as like the final 2 issues, and then maybe Zeus will return. Maybe that's a whole thing as well. So overall, I don't see it being a major thing, but I'd say it's still like a 7.5. It's good. It's a solid read. It doesn't feel as epic or as winding as like previous arcs in this book have. It feels very limited by its own scope. Poison Ivy, Cycle of Life and Death, number 2, written by Amy Chu, art by Clay Mann. So last issue we had Poison Ivy's co-worker ended up dying and being poisoned or whatever. And I guess I do need to correct one thing I said in the last issue. Last issue, I was under the impression that at least she knew that Poison Ivy was Poison Ivy, that Pamela Isley is Poison Ivy. I also assumed that was common knowledge. Apparently not. And this book clarifies that. So we open up this issue where we see Ivy has got a giant like lily or something like that she's coming up to. And she sees in her greenhouse these plants that are also part animal have developed into these crazy new things. And she's like, oh, this is fantastic. That's great. However, that was yesterday. Today, her coworker is dead. And this is Dr. Cruz, Louisa Cruz. So she arrives as Pamela Isley to the her place, the Botanical Gardens, and police are all there. They're doing an investigation. They're just like, oh, yes, it looked like poison because she was working with yew samples, the yew tree, which is apparently highly toxic. And so they all say like, yep, it must have been an accident. She accidentally poisoned herself. No big thing. And we see that there is the head administrator there named Victor Lee, and Lee is pushing for that real hard. Like, yes, I am the one in charge of all this, and this is very clearly just an accident. No need to look in further. Don't worry about it at all. And Dr. Grimley, who we already saw in the previous issue, is also there, but he's kind of keeping quiet. So as the police are asking around, they're like, okay, who was the last person to see her alive? And this new guy steps up. His name is Darshan Bapna. And he's like, yeah, I was the last one. I left the lab last night, and she seemed a little distracted. And that's when Ivy steps up and just like, I'm sorry, distracted. Are we trying to push this off as a mistake, as some sort of accident? She was a scientist. She was extremely careful about what she did. She knew what she was working with. There's no way she would poison herself. And the administrator guy's just like, hey, Pamela, how about just like shut up for a little bit? Just, we don't need to turn this into a whole thing. And then they're like, okay, well, Miss Isley, when was the last time you saw her? And just like, well, we had a school visit the other day, Gotham Academy. And then, the previous issue, Harley showed up, and she kind of phrases that as an old friend rolled into town, and I decided to blow off some steam with them. Please don't ask further questions. And the guy's like, well, we're going to need to follow up with your friend. Do you have contact information for them? And she's like, I really don't know how to say this without outing that I'm Poison Ivy. So, and then we see that this creepy other doctor guy, who I think was introduced last issue, his name's Winston, he comes up and he's like, hey, you don't have to be shy about it, Pam. She was sleeping with me, didn't want it to be a whole thing and out to the whole crew, but it's what it is, right, Pam? And Pam's like, yeah. So they're like, all right, well, fair enough. We'll get back to you if there's any other questions. And Winston's like, hey, don't worry about it. You can thank me later. And she's like, yeah, no, bye. So we see that Poison Ivy's home base is at the side of the Gotham City canal, which apparently is just the home of all the industrial dumping grounds and stuff over the years. And she is doing her best to clean it up as best she can. But she's looking over Louisa Cruz's profile, and she's like, hey, someone in that lab stole some of our research. That's one of the things I noticed there. I don't know who it was. I don't know why they would want to kill Louisa over that. Maybe they're trying to frame Poison Ivy because she was one of the only people who knew about it. Or, sorry, she didn't know about it, but maybe she found out or something like that. So regardless, we see that she has her plants and they are ready to bloom. They're like right on the verge of it. So she sets up a motion detector camera and is like, these things are animal plant hybrids, and whatever comes out of them will be a whole new thing. It's beyond anything else of like villain or hero. It is the next phase. So she steps over and just being like, well, time to go figure out more about Louisa. We go over to the police department, and the one cop there is like, I'm looking up everybody in the system, and I got backstories on everyone except for this Pamela Isley. got nothing on her. And the other cop is like, well, people nowadays, they value privacy. Damn them. Why not? Maybe this is just something to do with that. And it's like, all right, fair enough. So they more or less are trying to convince this guy it is all just accidental poisoning. It's not a murdered thing. We don't have to worry about this Pamela Isley. But he's not convinced. So we then see 1 week passes, and in honor of Dr. Cruz, they are taking a old, worn out area of Gotham, like this random lot that's been nothing but dirt and scrap metal, and they're turning it into an urban garden. And Poison Ivy is just like, I'll help, because better than nothing, but I still hate the idea of it. We should just destroy the whole city overall. Like, screw this place. Gotham is a cancer. But we see that Darshan Bhatna guy is there, and Poison Ivy's like, yeah, I've looked into him. He's got, he goes and volunteers with inmates of giving them food and whatnot, teaching them how to read. He's too good on paper. He has to have a dark secret. So she comes over and approaches, and he's just like, hey, yeah, I was with her the night she died. And she's like, oh yeah, you were? And he's like, no, I lied a little bit. So at that point, before we can get any more information, a couple of pit bulls show up out of nowhere. They start trying to attack. The Dapna just falls to the ground. He's covering his head, which gives Poison Ivy just enough time to use her vines to string up the dogs and then sedate them. It doesn't specifically say she does anything, but she's able to just walk up and start petting them, and they're fine. So at that point, Ivy's like, hey, I'm going to go check to see if I can find the owner. She walks around to the other side of the lot. And is like, hey, ma'am, were those your dogs that just tried to attack us? And she's like, those stupid mutts. I'll show them what for. And then Ivy just kills this lady. Just straight up and out. And she's like, if there's one thing I can't stand, it's abusers. She had what was coming to her. So she comes back to Bhatna, and Bhatna's like, hey, did you find the owner of the dogs? She's like, nope. No, I did not. So she ends up going home after that. We'll get more information later. When she arrives back at the lab, we see that the what's his name? Victor, the administrator guy, is having a word with Ivy and just like, hey, I need you not to push so much on the whole she died in a non-accident sort of way thing. And Ivy's like, oh, well, she did. Perfectly well she wouldn't have left her that. And he's like, look, I don't want to have to bring the cops back here because I might have to let slip that we hired an employee who is actually former criminal Poison Ivy. So maybe shut your trap. And she's just like, oh, all right. She storms out. She's all angry. She goes over to the water cooler. And that's where Bhatna comes back in. And he's like, look, I feel like this is partially my fault. I said that I saw her that night, but I didn't. The whole story, the big thing that actually happened was I was about to head into the lab, but I got a call back to be on Gotham's Got Talent. And I went up there, I rocked it, but they still didn't want me. I got the 3 X's, so yeah, I'm going to try again soon. And he says he never wanted to be a scientist. And she's like, what? Why? Science is awesome. And he's like, no, both my parents were scientists. I just wanted to dance and sing. That's what I wanted to be a star. And she's like, okay, that's a weird change up. And he's like, all right, let me continue telling you my backstory. I am part of a subdivision of a religion in India called Jain. We practice ahimsa, which is total pacifism. You cannot harm any animal or any plant. And that's why it's so easy for him to do this science stuff, because it's you don't have to. It's all very on the up and up. And she says oh, it takes a lot of effort to do that. And he's like, yeah. And they make the claim of okay, well, what do you eat though? If you're not allowed to harm animals or plants, what are you allowed to eat? And he says, I'm allowed to eat anything that falls off of a tree, but that means I can't even eat potatoes. And that's the super hardcore stuff. I don't know if I'm all about that, but he's trying at the very least. So all of a sudden Poison Ivy's phone goes off, motion detectors at her plants back home. She's like, all right, gotta run off, gotta do this. We get 2 sequences intercut. First is Bhatna goes into the office of Grimley and is like, hey, is everything all right in there, Professor? He gets knocked back by some huge figure that we don't get to see, and then all we see is Grimley dead on the ground. So he's already out. The other thing is Ivy returns back to her home, and she's like, this thing is a crossbreed of plant and animal. I basically am having to deliver a pregnancy right now. And so she steps up, the plants open up, they bloom, they start leaking some red fluid onto the ground, and then out comes 2 babies that are mostly human looking. One has a bunch of like plants coming out of its head, but the other one seems very human. So yeah, cycle of life and death. 1 dies, 2 are born. There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's a fine issue. I like it in the context of it looks great. I think the writing for the characters is on point. I'm just curious what path this book is going to go down, because if you told me last issue that it was going to be a mystery, I would say, of course, like it's solving the mystery of who killed this Cruz character. But while I do think the mystery aspect is going to be there, I am getting the vibe that this book is going to be much larger on like the philosophy aspect, that we're going to look into like different viewpoints on the world and how Poison Ivy has a very unique viewpoint in terms of being a villain, but like only a villain of the times more than anything else. Like it feels like, you know, all this eco-terrorism stuff is the predecessor towards just being better with the environment. So I don't know. It's got some weird context that I am curious to see how the book handles. I am into it, and like I said, the art looks great. So I think I'll give this one an 8. I think it's a great read, and I'm down for whatever happens coming up, but you know, it still hasn't quite firmly established what it is yet, so it could go off the rails. I have no idea, but I'm into it. I'm looking forward to it. And then 2 babies out of plants. I don't remember that being a part of her backstory, so surely it doesn't stick, but I'm curious where we end up with it. But yeah, 8 for this. I'm looking forward to the rest. Martian Manhunter number 9, written by Rob Williams, art by Eddy Barrows, Ronan Cliquet, and R.B. Silva. So, last issue, she's giant mech battle for the fate of Mars. Just accept it. This issue picks up with a young demon woman in bed talking to Constantine, who is throwing up in a toilet nearby, and she's like, you couldn't handle your blood absinthe, huh? And he's like, oh god, I don't know. And he's complaining about this bright red light from outside and this loud buzzing noise, and she's like, what are you talking about? There's no red light, there's no buzzing noise. And so he steps out and he looks outside and he sees Mars literally collapsing down onto them, and he's like, oh, that's a problem. So he goes over to the telescope, looks out in the sky, finds Mars like out in space where it's supposed to be, and he's like, okay, so that's the real Mars, and this is some other Mars that shouldn't be here and is about to collide and destroy all life on Earth, so should probably deal with that. And the demon lady's like, what do you see? And he's in his boxers, he throws on his overcoat and just starts sprinting down the street, and he's like, this is usually meant like this is like a Justice League sort of thing, but like seemingly none of them are seeing it, so I gotta get some help. We see Mr. Biscuits apparently has a vision of Constantine as he's running down the street, but we go back to the mech fight, and we see that I'm going to call it the human mech and the Martian mech, despite the fact that one of them is Malaflex mech, and the other one is the Martians and humans. So just know that's happening. So we see that the human mech is like going into the Martian mech. He's going big. He's like, all right, fire the boarding tethers, let's go. And Alicia's leading the cause. So they fire a bunch of cables. Some Martians start moving their way across, killing all of the Malflex. That's it. Mal's guys. And it's like, oh, we tethered, they're boarding us, all that stuff. And Mal's just like, oh, Mars, I've sacrificed so much to you. You must help me out here. And we see the little child Martian that has been in this book throughout. Mal ends up sensing it and being like, wait a minute, the child's here, and also Martian Manhunter's here. This is literally all I was looking for in my plan for these past 20 years. So screw that. Go bring me the Manhunter. And all the people on board the mech are like, what about the invading force? And they're like, screw that, not important. He snaps the guy's neck and just like, go get me Martian Manhunter. So we cut over to wherever Daryl, Wessel, and Pearl are, and Daryl's like, I don't know where Mr. Biscuits went to. There's a giant mech here, like it's all crazy. And he looks over at Pearl, and Pearl's like not okay, and she's like, how am I supposed to be okay in the middle of all this? I thought I was human. And he comes over and gives her a hug and just being like, then just be human. Like, you are what you choose to be. So we then cut to John, who last issue was impaled with some energy hook things, and the other soldiers coming in are like, okay, well, we can't get them off the hooks. They're too embedded. We were told that the Manhunter, this weapon, is formed from many different Martians, so let's just cut them back into little Martian bite-sized pieces. Like, that should work. And we get the inner monologue of John's basically saying, like, I should just give up. This sucks. I don't want to continue on. But he has a vision of all the Martians he swore to protect, and he's like, well, I guess I got to fight for them. So he unleashes this big laser blast to take out a couple of the soldiers. He frees himself by just shape-shifting off of the energy hooks. And then he starts shape-shifting to fill all of the crevices and everything inside of the Martian mech. And as he's flooding it all with his body, he's like killing all the soldiers inside. He fully takes it over and reforms it to look like a giant mech version of himself. So he calls out to the other mech saying, like, save them. And the other people inside, including Malfleck, is like, oh my god, he's here, he's taking the whole thing, every man for himself. And Malfleck just bounces out the window, basically saying, like, I'm gonna go find the child, and that's gonna be my end game. That's what we're doing here. So the Martian mech hunter looks over the cities on Mars, and he's like, look, we can reopen the portal, send this Mars back to where it should, where it belongs. I can save my people and Earth. I just need you to help me out. And Alicia's like, no, screw you. I'm putting an end to all this. You're the reason that's going to happen. I'm taking you out. And she throws a punch with the mech, and Martian mech hunter just catches it and is like, Alicia, I sent you in there. Stop thinking like a stupid adult with all your prejudices and everything else. Think back to when you were a kid and you trusted Mr. Biscuits and all that. He was an aspect of me. You can trust me. And she's like, okay, fine. Tell us what you need. So Mr. Biscuits, meanwhile, is running up the mountains of Mars. There's like lightning strikes everywhere. And he's trying to find the Martian child. He's trying to get to it before Malafleck does. He ends up tripping off the edge of a cliff, and he holds on with just like his cane, and he's like, oh geez, I'm not gonna fall down there, that's be crazy. But he hears a voice from down beneath saying, like, let go, give yourself to the truth. And he's like, that's stupid, there's no way I'm ever going to. And then he loses track with his cane and falls in anyway. So we then cut over to the mech, who is now holding Daryl and Pearl in his hands. Pearl has taken back to her human form, and she's like, I decided to be human. I'm standing with the Earth. It's what I always was. And he's like, well, you represent my heart, and if you've sided with the humans, then that says a lot about me. So fair enough. I'm siding with Earth. And he tells Daryl, like, look, Daryl, you represent the hunter aspect of me. That's what you are. I need you to go find the Martian child. It is very important. It can open a portal to let us all get out of here, and we can handle everything. Alicia, get your soldiers. We're going to use everyone we can to get all of the innocent Martian people from down on the ground into these mechs. Do not leave anyone behind, because this planet is toast. Like, we are absolutely destroying it here. Meanwhile, he's going to control this mech. Pearl is going to control the other mech. And yeah, the plan is that they're going to fly these mechs over to Earth safely before the portal reopens. And Alicia is like, I'm sorry, what? And we cut over to Mr. Biscuits one last time, as he apparently has come across the Martian child, and the child is like, you are John Jones' subconscious. That's going to make this a lot easier. Let's talk about how you were created. And all I can think is, finally, we're doing that. So, no, this book is silly. This book is a silly book. I like how it's leaned into it, because I think that's the biggest thing is when you start reading this book, you get Mr. Biscuits, but he feels like comedic relief amongst an otherwise serious book. And I would say for the first arc, that's entirely true. I think it is a very serious book that Mr. Biscuits is comedic relief in. But I think that once we got around to this arc, it's so big and it's so crazy that it can't be played straight anymore. Like, we have to have these moments of the Martian Manhunter is literally absorbing an entire mech and turns it into him in the middle of a mech battle. Like, it's dumb, it's silly, but it's fun in that way. And I think all the other characters have now kind of gotten on board with that. Once you get into that mindset, I think it starts working out better. So we still got like 3 more issues. I'm sure we'll get some good payoffs, some good other stuff. Of course, Earth will be saved, but we'll see at what cost. And I really enjoyed this one. I think moving into the explanations, I'm going to enjoy it even more, but this one still pretty easily gets to the 8 for me. I think it's a very good read, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the series now. Dr. Fate number 9, written by Paul Levitz, art by Sonny Liew. So last issue, we ended up with a whole bunch of different protests and stuff going on, though most of the issue was kind of spent with a philosophical mindset of who is Dr. Fate's like god system, like what's the proper god system here. But this one goes back to the protests and stuff like that. So we see a bunch of people are protesting the Egyptian stuff. It's United Nations, whatever else there. And apparently Aquila is in there as well. And Khalid is just looking on from above. He's like, okay, well, this is getting a little twitchy and things might be approaching riot territory. So like, I feel like I should do something. How do I do it without being labeled as like a supervillain? And the Fate helmet's like, you are Fate. Do not worry about mortal labels. And he's like, okay, but like, I am, because I'm also like a teenager. So yeah, let's see if we can figure that out. So we see that he goes over, and as the thing starts mounting into a full-scale riot, he takes one of like the barricades that are in the area that are made of like iron, and he goes over to the police and just kind of scoops them all up in it, wraps them up a little bit, and he's like, all right, well, the police are taken care of. They're not going to escalate or anything like that, but what do I do with them? And he just drops them into Gotham Harbor. I will say that before that point, they did have like glowing red eyes to instill that they're not in full control of themselves, but regardless, as they get dropped off, they seem to be fine. We then see that Khalid gets blasted by a water cannon from a nearby boat out in the harbor. And he's just like, Jesus, why did I get hit? And as he lands, I don't know if this is some aspect of New York that I'm just not familiar with. As he lands, he comes across a statue of a giant head of someone. And he's like, oh, what, we're going to do a Sphinx riddle now? Like, is that what's going to happen? And then he just leaves. I have no idea what this is, but regardless, he goes back over to where the protest is, and he's like, all right, well, I don't know why they shot me down, but whatever, back to the thing. We then cut over to the American Museum of Natural History, where his mom is helping a intern with preparing a bone from an archaeology dig. And she's like, oh, you just got to be precise. Like, I dug this out of the ground myself. And he's like, what? You went out into the field? And she's like, what? You think old women like me can't go out into the field? Yeah, no, I'm not just shame on you for thinking that much. So she grabs some tweezers and she very quickly like removes the embedded dirt or whatever's on it. Just like, there you go. That's the thing. Anyway, get out of my office. I don't want to deal with interns right now. And so he leaves, and she's like, oh, man, children. I mean, I guess when I was young, I made hell for my uncle. Maybe I should owe him an apology for everything I did back then. And she pulls out a letter addressed to her, which I have to assume comes from the uncle, because she says, oh, now I have a reason to give him a call, but let me see if his great nephew is going to be coming home from dinner. So she texts Khalid, who's currently still flying in the sky, and she's like, oh, you coming back for dinner? And he's like, I'm probably just going to get dinner after I find Aquila. And she's like, oh, she's such a nice girl. You spend a lot of time. Have fun with her. And he's like, no, not like that. She's at a protest. And she's like, oh, that protest on TV, it says is about to be a riot. You might want to keep your distance. He's like, yeah, later, Mom. So once again, the police are back into the fold. They get over there, and she's just like, okay, heal the world. I guess I'll go ahead and try something here. So we see him take all of the water out of the harbor, and he's like, this is an EMT trick. If you want to heal something, first you have to clean it out. You have to give it a chance to fight against the infection. So he takes all of this water and just dumps it into the city. It separates out the two sides of the fight, police and protesters. And then as he gets down to the ground, he causes an earthquake schism right across the pavement, and it separates it enough that the two sides are like physically separated. So he's like, well, hopefully that's enough. And, you know, if they want to continue to fight, they got to walk half a mile to get around this giant chasm. So whatever. But he's looking around trying to find Aquila and cannot find her. So he just kind of focuses on her and says like, all right, Aquila, where are you? And this beam of light just leads him down some streets, being like, oh, I guess that's the way that works. So we then cut over to the college where, of course, Khalid is supposed to be doing his doctorate. And the teacher comes up and talks to Shia and is like, hey, your friend Khalid, he hasn't shown up to class. And Shia's like, oh, he's had like a family emergency. His father was hospitalized. It's the whole thing. And Doctor's like, that's all fine to miss class, but like he can't use excuses to miss an operation or something like that on a patient. Like, he needs to get his ducks in a row. Tell him that. Like, make sure is aware of that. And she's like, oh, yes, ma'am. So Shia texts Khalid, trying to figure out where he is. No response immediately because he's still following the little beam of light over to where Aquila is, which ends up being like in Chinatown, like implied to be the seedy, more shady part of town. And he's like, she would never come down here of her own volition. Like, she's not into any sort of like Chinese food or anything. So it leads over to a police jail, and he's just like, crap. So I've got two options. Option A, I have a jailbreak and I might let out, the protesters and some low-level offenders, but I also might let out some higher-level offenders, which would not be good. Or I just let her rot in jail until her parents find out. Neither of those seem like good options. How am I supposed to handle this? However, turns out that the light just led Khalid to where she was going to be, because a police van arrives and we see a bunch of protesters all being led out right then. And he's like, oh, well, that simplifies down things. So he doesn't want to get too involved visually because this is just straight up attacking the police. So he causes some power cables to spring up from the ground. They shock the police officers into submission. He grabs hold of some random tablecloth that's being dried out on a clothesline and drapes himself in it, swoops in, grabs Aquila, and is like, all right, I got you. You're not going to prison tonight. Are they going to notice you missing? And she's like, no, I never even gave them my names. It's no problem. And as he flies her over to the bridge, he's like, go back to your Brooklyn family, like, get out of here. And she's like, wait, hold on. There were other protest leaders that were taken. The Egyptian seized them. You should go and help them. And he's like, do not command fate. I will do my own thing. But then as he leaves, he's like, yeah, I mean, I should probably do that, though. Like, this seems like a good thing to do. So he flies over to the Egyptian consulate and just like, well, this is the only place that the Egyptians could be keeping people, so I guess I'll just dip in. And he phases through the glass, and he's like, the only time I've done this before, I knew what was on the other side. Hopefully this isn't going to get me killed. But he steps through, and he's like, all right, fair enough. He tries doing that searching for the protesters thing the same way he did for Aquila. Doesn't work out, so he's like, well, because I just got to explain it. Or explore it. So he starts going down through the levels of the place, and he's like, all right, well, nothing here, nothing here, nothing here. Eventually he makes his way down to the basement, and as he gets down there, he is greeted not only by a bunch of protesters who are in a cell being watched by a guard, but also a bunch of ancient Egyptian ghosts that are all holding spears. And he was like, oh, okay, that's a thing. Yeah, no, it's a fine issue. I don't know. I was really hoping that after the end of the Anubis arc, this would find a better voice. This would find, like, not even like, the context of the book is fine. I like this idea of the young, unexperienced hero being thrust into this big thing, and, like, he doesn't know his powers. He has to figure it out, because Fate is always going to be a very nebulously powered, just magic kind of guy. I like the exploration aspect. My problem being is that whenever there is something to take care of, it feels like it's always taken care of in half measures, like 4 times. And then for some reason, the 4th time just sticks, Like, the whole Anubis arc was a problem because it kept feeling like he's going in, he's fighting Anubis. Maybe he's successful, maybe not. But for some reason, the last time sticked. same thing here where, okay, we've got this protester thing going on. He drops all the police officers off in the harbor, but then the protest continues on. And it's like, okay, well, now he has to fix that again. But then Aquila's off doing something else, and so he has to take out the police again. And then now there's this thing with, oh, these other protesters were also down in this underground area, so now he's having to do that. Like, it's the same problem that he keeps fixing, and it doesn't feel like it ever actually sticks. I think that's my biggest problem here, is that I don't get a sense of forward progression in this book. I get a sense of he just keeps on doing things until eventually the book ends. So, yeah, I'm hoping that we can find a better voice for that. This is one of those books that continues on well into Rebirth. There's like a whole extra trade or two after Rebirth kicks in. So I'm hoping we can get something to go on there, but it just feels a little listless. All in all, I'm going to say a 6.5 for this. It's still fine. It's just not quite up to good for me, but might get something out of it. We've got ancient Egyptian ghosts. That's fun. See where we go from there. Secret 6, number 11, written by Gail Simone, art by Dale Eaglesham. So last issue was a kind of underwhelming finale to the previous arc. It was wrapping up its own stuff. This is more or less beginning a brand new arc here. And we open up with everyone sitting outside having a little bonfire, and Porcelain apparently wants to spar with Strix. And we see Big Shot's like, hey, maybe this is an awful idea, because Strix is a lot more trained than you are and can kill you. And Porcelain's like, it's whatever. We're doing a trade-off. She's going to teach me a little bit of sparring, and then I'm going to give her a makeover because she said she wanted that. So let's go ahead and do this. And we see Alice and Ventriloquist and Fergie are all watching on. And the moment it begins, she's just like, all right, don't think you got to go easy on me. And Strix just kick right up to the face, punch to the stomach, elbow to the jaw, and in 3 seconds, Porcelain is down on the ground. No idea what happened. Strix writes a little note saying, you did very good, and Porcelain's like, well, that's good. I'm glad I had that at least. So Big Shots helps her up to her feet, and they all look around and question, hey, what happened to Catman? And it turns out Catman's going out to take their pets for a walk, which consists of the pit bull named Perp that we were introduced to beginning of the series, and then that half sheep, half fly amalgamation that was made in the previous arc, that also belongs to them. So he's just walking through a park. We see this woman and her daughter come up, and the daughter wants to pet the dogs, and the mom starts flirting with Catman, just being like, hey, I haven't seen you around here before. Maybe I could show you some of the lovely things around town. And Catman's like, your daughter's petting an unholy creature that God did not ordain. And we see that she's rubbing the sheep fly thing, and immediately the mom's freaking out, get away from that, oh god, and they just sprint off down the road. Catman, however, knows somebody nearby is watching him, and we see that somebody is up a tree. It's Batgirl, and Batgirl jumps down and just being like, oh, maybe I let you know that I would, whatever, you get the gist of it. And Batgirl basically says, all right, tie up your dogs, we don't want them to get away. And he's like, for what? Well, why would I do that? And she's like, because we're gonna fight, because you're a bad guy and I'm a hero. And he's like, that's not a very good reason to me. And all this while, he's getting a plastic bag ready to pick up the dog's poo. So Batgirl's like, okay, well, it doesn't matter what you want. We're still going to do this. And he's like, no, you have a nice night. Give my best to all those Gothamites and whatnot. And he drops the dog poo bag off in her hand and just starts walking away. And Batgirl's like, nope, throws the bag at the back of his head. And he's like, are you trying to rile me up? And she's like, maybe. So then they start fighting. It's a whole thing. He tries to sick Perp, the pit bull, on her. It runs up, looks like it's about to pounce, and then just rolls on its belly and asks for belly rubs. And she's like, say what you will about Nightwing as my partner, but he never stopped the fight to ask for belly rubs. The Catman's like, well, his loss. So the fight continues on. She's throwing batarangs. They're doing whatever. It eventually just ends in a Looney Tunes-esque cloud of smoke. And when they part, they're just like, okay, all right, good enough fight. Are we good? Can we stop, please? And Batgirl's like, yeah, that's fair. I just needed to make sure that you were an okay guy and that you didn't use lethal means to do this sort of stuff. And he's like, well, you didn't piss me off enough to do that. And she's like, whatever. I need to talk to Strix. I need to get to her. And I know that by following you, I can get to her. And if I can get to her by following you, other people can as well. She's not safe. So we cut over to the makeover section. We see Porcelain's getting Strix ready. She, of course, wears the bandages around her head, so she takes them off and reveals the horrible scarring that she's had over time. And Porcelain's like, okay, all right, that's it. We're going to have to do some heavy foundation, some cover-up, but we'll get there. We'll do whatever. And we see Ventriloquist and Ferdy are watching from the door, and Ferdy seems to be, upset by this. He's not okay. Big Shot gets a call from Catman as Catman's running back home with Batgirl and basically says, hey, get Ventriloquist out of there, get her out of the house. I'm bringing home some Gotham company, if you catch my drift. And she's like, yeah, hey, do you really know what you're dealing with Strix? And Catman's like, what do you mean? She's fine. She communicates via notes, and it's like, yeah, that's her mind is still at that young level and all that emotionally, but she is a lot older than that, and she is a lot more dangerous. And we just get the backstory for her. It was already explained over in Batgirl when she appeared, but Oregon Coast, 1945, right in the middle of, towards the end of World War II. She's part of a family, brother, mother, and father, and they're all going out on a picnic. And the Japanese forces built apparently thousands of paper balloons that would float over the ocean and were strapped with some explosives. And one of them went off and killed her family and maimed her. But it was all covered up by the papers. No one, as to not inspire a sense of panic, no one ever knew about it. So she was eventually brought in by the Court of Owls, trained as an assassin, and they kept her in cryofreeze. And that's her whole story. She got out during the Night of Owls. We then see that Big Shot gets another call back as I get Catman hung up, and he's like, oh, it's probably Catman again. Hey, what's going up? And turns out that it's actually Sue Dibney, his wife, because if you've forgotten by now, Big Shot is actually Elongated Man. So she's calling saying, hey, I'm starting to remember, can I come back home? And she's like, at a big belly burger. And he's like, yes, of course. Oh, Jesus, I'll be there in a moment. You come home, you do whatever. So we cut back over to the makeover. We see Porcelain super excited. She's completely made up Strix, and Strix appears to be completely quote unquote normal. So she goes off to pick out an outfit. Meanwhile, Ferdy and Ventriloquist come in, and Ventriloquist is like, Ferdy wants to say something. And basically like, hey, I just wanted you to know that you were perfect before. You don't have anything to hide. You shouldn't have to change yourself. You looked fine to me, and you earned those scars. You shouldn't have to be ashamed of them. That's all I got to say about that. And we see Big Shot is so excited, he grabs Ventriloquist and Ferdy, says, hey, we're going out for ice cream, let's go. Time's a wasting. A, to get them out of the way for Batgirl, and B, also because he is excited. So they sprint out the door. We see Strix is scowling at herself in the mirror. She ends up punching the mirror, shattering it, and then wiping off all the makeup. And Porcelain comes in like, what's up? Why are we undoing all this? And hastily Strix writes down, I am Strix, not makeup. And Porcelain's like, hey, it's cool. It's all right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely no problem. We also get a little bit more explanation that who is after Strix, because after Batgirl tells the Court of Owls storyline, he's like, oh, so the Court of Owls are after her? And she's like, no, I've got some chatter on the internet. I've got someone who pays attention to that sort of stuff. And they found that one of the competitors to the Court of Owls, a rival organization, is looking to get to Strix. Whether it's for revenge or recruitment, we don't know, but they're looking to find her. So we see Big Shot and Black Alice and Ventriloquist are all walking down the street, and they're like, yep, we got a date with the most amazing girl on earth. It's going to be great. Everything's fantastic. Nothing can bring us down. And then all of a sudden they get jumped. Immediately everyone but Black Alice is taken out. She transforms into her cheetah form and then is also taken out. And we see the shadowy figure tries to stab Big Shot through the neck. Luckily, elongated wise, it just stretches so it doesn't kill him. But we find out that this is Lady Shiva from the League of Assassins, and she has come for Strix. So, all right. I mean, fine. That's cool. I remember, because Shiva has what I think Shiva looks like here. She looks as Shiva does in my mind. I remember Shiva showed up in a Nightwing issue, maybe like forever ago, and she looks significantly different. So maybe a tiny little retcon here, but overall, a good read. I liked it. Again, the humor of this book is what really kind of sells it for me. I like the being trapped in suburbia kind of aspect of it, and the melodrama, the kind of soap opera stuff that plays out as well. So overall, solid book. Drawings are also fantastic. So I'm going to say this one easily gets up to an 8. I don't know if I would say an 8.5. I think there is kind of an upper cap on a book that I like for comedy's sake, but it's fantastic still, regardless. So definitely check it out if you haven't. Harley Quinn number 25, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Chad Hardin. So kind of a big anniversary issue. 25 is always where they do a whole big thing for anniversaries. Last issue we had Harley going to Gotham to help break her boyfriend out of Arkham, and we found out that his cell neighbor was the Joker, who also found out that Harley was involved in this stuff and started sharing some secrets. This issue picks up. Harley gets off the subway. She immediately meets up with Ivy and is like, oh, hey, it's so good to see you, everything else there. And immediately Ivy's like, look, I heard about your plan. I got the list of things you needed me to get. I got all the stuff. But I really do not like this plan. I need you to understand that, like, this has the potential to go south quick. And Harley, goes out for dinner, has some drinks with Ivy, and they're just waiting basically until tomorrow in order to do it. And she's ignoring the fact she's trying to push it away and, like, dodge around it until finally they get back home. And Ivy's basically pushing them forward, like, look, you're going into Arkham, and at this point in time, Joker is incarcerated there. And not only that, our intel says that he's on the same floor, at the very least, that your beau is being held in. So, like, that's kind of a big thing. What's your plan to deal with that? And she's basically just like, look, I know that I have a soft spot for him, but also I want to kill him. So I think it's for everyone's best interest that I just stay away. I just avoid him to my best. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on Mason, nothing else. And Ivy's like, all right, fair enough. They flirt a little bit. There's some cheesecake shots of Harley getting undressed. But regardless, the next day comes and we go to Arkham, where her plan is that she's assumed a new identity. They mentioned something about a boat that will come back into play later. And she's gotten dressed as this new Dr. Shipman. So they go into Arkham. We see that Harley is bringing some pills inside. And she's basically getting interviewed to start working here as this Dr. Shipman. However, a couple of guards are watching through a one-way mirror, and they're like, that's Harley Quinn. It's immediately like, that's definitely Harley. And I'll just read what one of the guards says. He actually was on the level and ratted out his ex. He must really hate her. I think they're talking about the Joker and saying, like, oh yeah, she's going to be showing up here and doing whatever. But regardless, they're like, all right, should we get her now? Like, it's definitely her. And it's like, no. We've got an office for her to set up in. There's only one way in and out. We can set up a better trap there. So they let her get prepped in her office. She dumps out the bottle of pills and takes one of them. She says it'll protect her from something big later on. And then she justifies getting out of her costume. Like, she has, like, fake skin color and a wig on and all that. She just says it makes her look scarier. And then as she's about to leave the office to start her plan, immediately there are guards surrounded her wearing gas masks. And they're like, haha, we're prepared for you. And she's like, you're prepared for the gas, but not for the beating that follows. And so she drops some gas canisters and starts kicking everybody. One of them gets their mask kicked off, and he immediately starts transforming into this giant Hulk figure. And she's like, oh, and like he starts attacking all the other guards just out of blind rage. And she's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have taken that pill to help protect me from these effects, because this would be a lot easier if I had that going on for me. So she's trying to dodge around the guards. She needs a distraction. She throws some more of those pills into the mess hall where there's a bunch of inmates. Everything is immediately chaos. And so she runs down into the heavy prisoner section, the ones that are more needing a watch on. And she takes one of the key cards, finds Mason's cell, goes in just like, hey, we got to get out of here. We don't have much time. And Mason's like, I've been talking to the guy in the cell next door, and I've heard some really messed up stuff about you. And she's like, what? Who told you? Like, what? You believe them? And he's like, does it matter? Like, did you do it? And she's like, I mean, it matters that you would just believe some random person, but like, look, we don't have time for this. We're going to lock down, take this pill, and we can talk about this later. And as they start running out, Joker comes to his cell and is like, you want to come over here? And he just basically starts taunting Harley. And Harley's like, is that the one who was telling you things? And he's like, yeah, that was it. And she's like, you can't listen to him. I did some bad things back in the day. I absolutely did. But like, it's only because of him. He brought me down into that place where the only way to go is up. And like, I have an entire new life now and I want to do what's right. And you know me. And like, he is the representation of everything that was bad about my previous life. And this whole time, Joker's just taunting and mocking and like saying, hey, you want to come over here. You want to do all this stuff. As I read this, I can absolutely hear the Mark Hamill voice coming in. Like, it fits perfectly. But regardless, Mason's just like, yeah, okay. No, I'm sorry I ever doubted you. Like, I shouldn't have believed someone else. It won't happen again. And Joker's like, oh, well, me without my camera. How about you come on over here and open this door, you red and black bimbo? And Harley's like, oh, okay, this guy sucks. Mason, you just hang out here for a second. I got to deal with this. And she opens up the door and steps inside and closes it behind her. And Joker's like, what are you doing? Unlock the door. And she tucks away the key card. Mason's like, hey, no, don't go in there. It's dangerous. And she's like, no, just give me a couple minutes. And what follows is basically just Joker being abusive. He prods her and says, like, I don't know what your plan is, but you're an idiot. I'm going to murder you here. I'm going to squeeze you till your eyes pop out. And she just stands her ground. She says, no, it's not going to happen. Like, remove your finger, as he's like poking her. And eventually he gets so pissed off, he slams her head into a wall. He says, like, oh, you're frail in both body and mind. That's why you need me. I'll give you one more chance. And she ends up headbutting him, and a full-on fight breaks out. And it's hardcore. And Harley hits back, basically says, like, I got enough of my own problems. I don't need you showing up here as well. And it goes back and forth until eventually Joker's like, look, we both know what you want. Just give into it. And seemingly forces a kiss with Harley. Harley uses the opportunity to bite his lip and then rip it off, to which point he just starts bleeding. And she just stands up and just like, all right, rotten hell, you schmuck. And he finally gets up just being like, nope, this isn't anything like that. And he starts trying to choke her out. She finally flips him over and says, like, look, all I wanted to do back then was talk to you, and here we are now, pounding each other to a pulp because it's what we do every time we get together. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. I'm done with it. So Mason makes him aware that some guards are coming. Harley's like, all right, use the pellets. I'll be out in a second, which is whatever those leftover pills are. Harley basically gives a ultimatum to Joker, basically says, like, look, you meant something to me at one point. I never want to see you or hear about you again. You're never going to mess with my friends or my family. And if I ever see you again, I'm going to finish this. Like, I'm not going to be so nice. So she walks out of the room. Mason's already dealing with a guard. Harley just punches through his gas mask and knocks him out. And they start leaving. But Joker gets up one last time and is like, oh, Harley, you still love me. You can't be without me. It's driving you insane. And she pulls out one of the guard's guns, aims it at the Joker's head. He starts laughing. And she's like, you know what? I know why Batman didn't ever do this. It's because it would be giving you exactly what you wanted. So I guess she gets out. She leaves. They're both waiting for the boat to show up. And in comes Ivy with the Bat boat. And Harley's like, oh my God, I can't believe you got this. And she's like, yeah, we got to be careful, though. I think the owner might be onto me. So they start speeding their way across Gotham. Mason is like, hey, do you miss the city? And she's like, nah, I got my own place. I miss my friends and all that here, but I've got a new home in New York. And as they pull up to a dock, Batman is standing there along with Big Tony, Eggsy, Mason's mom, and the fortune teller lady I cannot remember the name of. And so we basically get the rundown that Tony, as all this was happening, Tony was reaching out and he managed to get a hold of Batman and explain the situation. Batman was very understanding and was like, yeah, he still committed a crime. Mason still did that, but he is going to be put under Batman surveillance, under witness protection to take down the mayor. as a criminal. So at that point, Harley's like, wait a minute, but that means that I'm not going to be able to see him. He's going to be going away. And Batman's like, yeah, he's going to be going away for a long time, but it's the only way this is going to work. And Mason's like, don't worry about me. Like, I if this needs to happen, I still need to pay my penance for killing someone. Even if it was an accident, I still did it. It needs to happen. And so they have an emotional parting, and Harley's upset that he needs to go, but she understands, and he says how grateful he is to have her in his life. As they share a kiss, Madame Macabre specifically points out to Ivy, like, oh, does this make you jealous? And she's like, nah, I just like seeing her happy. And Batman then meets up with Harley and just like, hey, you are leaving Gotham, right? Like, I want to be clear, you're not welcome here. And she's like, nah, I got my own home elsewhere. Don't worry about it. So he's like, good, I'm keeping an eye on you. And then he gets the keys from the Batboat back from Ivy. So they all take off. They do their thing. Harley says bye to Ivy as everyone else hops onto a subway. And Harley's just kind of emotionally exhausted. Just like, yeah, there's a lot going on there, but at least we'll be back home in a few hours. So now they have to take care of Madame Macabre's wax museum. She's like, well, you got some new stuff. And she looks over and talks to Queenie, that's her name, Queenie, and says, hey, how good are you with makeovers? And Queenie says, oh, I'm fantastic. Why? What do you have in mind? And when we just get this wink of the eye of Harley saying that she's got a bunch of ideas, all of them looking like Margot Robbie. So yeah, that's kind of like, this book has always been, and not even this book, Harley in the New 52, if you go back to Death of the Family, I feel like that's kind of the first point where it's saying Harley is recognizing the abuse, she's getting away from Joker, and the other books kind of hem and haw with it. Sometimes she's more willing to go back to him, sometimes she's completely separated, but I like this issue as the turning point, the one where she specifically says, in no uncertain terms, we are moving on past that. Harley is no longer just sidekick of the Joker. She is her own character. And I mean, it's weird because the whole reason that the development of Harley is happening so much right now in terms of this book is because of the Suicide Squad movie, where she absolutely has not made that jump. Like, she absolutely is still in that line. So I don't know, maybe books, the books eventually get there, matching up the movies, but it's weird. It's just weird that we get this so early on comparatively. Obviously, Harley's been around since the 90s, but, in terms of New 52 status quo and all that. So, yeah, anyway, book-wise, I like it. I think it's well done. It's very straightforward and to the point of what it wants to do, and it handles it well. So I got no problem giving this one like a 7.5. I think it's a very, very solid issue. I still hesitate to call this great. I think great is kind of just out of my wheelhouse for this book because it isn't my target like demo. I'm not huge on the character of Harley to begin with, but as far as a Harley issue can go, this one is fantastic. So 7.5, and get ready for Blonde Harley. Batman and Robin Eternal number 20, written by Snyder, Tynion, and Seeley, art by Roge Antonio and Geraldo Borges. So, last issue, all the big stuff went into effect, yada, yada, yada. This issue picks up at St. Hadrian's, where we see one of the professors is being protected by one of the students who, for some reason, is not affected. I'm not clear as to the reasons why. But they board themselves up in the gymnasium, and she's like, well, I can't think of a more fitting final exam here than you having to fight off hordes of all your other classmates, or else they'll kill both of us. So honestly, a lot of this is broken into the different storylines, where we have Red Robin, Helena, and Dr. Netz trying to go down to shut down the generators beneath the school, whereas Grayson, Red Hood, Cassandra, and I guess technically Harper, are all together fighting off the hordes of the teenage girls and whatnot. And more importantly, they're trying to deal with Harper now attacking Cassandra. So I'll stick with that to begin with. Harper is just going ham on Cassandra, like going nuts. They are both ingesting fear toxin in order to keep them safe from the mind control stuff. But even Grayson's like, something's wrong. Like, the fear toxin should, like, it might scare her into doing something, but not this much. Like, she is going nuts. And Harper's just saying, like, she killed my mother. She's going to kill me. I got to kill her first. And Cassandra's trying to fight against it as well. Grayson calls out, just being like, Harper, you got fear toxin. You got to calm down. And she's like, oh, I thought she was my friend, Dick, but she killed my mom, and she was holding my hands with the same hands that killed her. And like, oh, my mom's blood is everywhere. And we see she's firing off taser shots. Grayson tackles Cassandra out of the way, but he ends up getting nicked by one. As Cassandra and Harper continue their fight, with Cassandra trying to de-escalate it, we see that one of the taser shots ended up causing a door to malfunction and open up. And inside is Poppy, the girl from Spiral, who is, I guess, just chilling. Like, she got out of her containment, but she's still just hanging out there. And she's like, well, gonna go ahead and take care of this problem then. So she has a cat of nine tails that is powered up by some sort of energy. She's attacking Grayson for it. And by the way, in case this wasn't remembered, she's to some extent a cannibal. Just accept it. And so she's like, oh, well, I'm not leaving without a last supper. And Grayson's like, you know what? Helena would say this is pot calling the kettle black, but Poppy, you talk too much. And Grayson just kicks her in the face. So at this point, I guess the easiest option would be to say Red Hood gets involved as Cassandra and Harper continue fighting. He knocks Harper to the ground, just being like, look, I have fought way too many teen girls today, but if you want to keep going, just call me warmed up. And Harper throws a punch into Red Hood's face, and he's just like, I'm going to ignore that because I can tell you're going through something right now, and I'm going to try to treat this logically. If I can be more Red Hood or Red Robin than Red Hood, so can you. And we see from Harper's perspective, she's hallucinating something of like Red Hood being orphan, and he's like, oh, we both know you're hallucinating like crazy. And then Cassandra goes over and picks up the taser, which at this point, for whatever reason, they've all been doused in some sort of liquid, water. And so when she fires off the taser, it ends up knocking them all out. So that's that story. Meanwhile, we see Red Robin and Dr. Netz along with Helena going downstairs. We see Helena's basically taking out a bunch of students on the way and keeping Red Robin safe because he is not okay with the hallucinogens. So the elevator's been cut out by Orphan. We know that this is a trap that was set by him because he figured out that they would be going this way, but they have no other choice. So they're forced to start climbing down the elevator shaft, and Tim sees it as an entrance to hell itself. And he's like, yeah, all right, let's go. We can do this. So as they start making their way down, as they realize they're down towards the bottom and are about to get there, Helena's like, well, that means we're going to be attacked any second now. And then all of a sudden there's an explosion up top. She's got her bow drawn. Orphan comes down, David Kane, get ready to attack her, and they start fighting on the elevator cables. So Netz and Red Robin make their way in. And this whole time, by the way, Netz is making jokes, like little puns and whatnot. Like, as Helena tells them to go, she quotes the Bible by saying, I will not leave you as orphans. To which Netz says, well, if she's going to quote the Bible, I'm going to quote a sign I saw in a cubicle once, which is, you don't have to be crazy to work here. Oh, wait, yes, you do. Be quiet, laundry basket. And then Red Robin, even through scarecrow drugs, is like, how is that appropriate? So we see that they managed to make their way over to the computer. They're trying to uncode the stuff or whatever, and nothing is working. Like, Tim's not able to get in, and she's like, well, did you try writing the programming backwards? And he's like, what? Well, you mean like write a code that turn the generators on? And she's like, yeah, it's Spiral. Like, we do everything like weird and like it's all different and whatnot. And Drake is like, even if I wasn't on fear toxin, I would hate this place with every fiber of my being. So we cut back over briefly to the professor and the kids in there, and she's just like, yeah, well, you know, you this is a place you gotta figuratively and literally kill for a good grade. We cut over to Grayson's and Helena's fights. Each of them has got the other person on the ropes. So David Kane is losing to Helena briefly. Poppy's down on the ground for Grayson. And then Poppy calls over to Kane and says, hey, are we in position? And Kane says yes. And then all simultaneously, they both hold up their hands to the other person's face, and there is an eye, a glowing eye inscribed on their palms, which we'll get the explanation later. causes an uplink to this Hypnos satellite that's out in space. And it says encryption unlocked. And we see Mother is watching on via some hidden cams or whatever, saying, oh, good, you've made Mother proud. So as the gymnasium is finally breached, we see Tim is like, oh, I'm a failure. I can't do this. And Neds is like, yes, you can do it. And so they hit the button, the generator shut down, and all of the kids just collapse. They're all safe now. Nobody's being under control of Mother. However, Mother is calling David Kane and Poppy back to base, saying, oh, and by the way, bring our guests or don't bother coming at all. So as everyone is now, able to take off the fear masks, everyone's back together, figuring out what's up. They're like, all right, we did it. We cut to a little bit later where we see the town that they're outside of in England. There are some repair efforts being made, some stuff like that. Helena's out helping. And Grayson meets up saying like, hey, we only had a couple casualties. It's not too bad, but Orphan and Poppy disappeared and they took Harper and Cass with them when they were unconscious during whatever happened with them. I don't think Red Hood's going to be able to forgive himself for that, but yeah, they took them. And also, Mother got the codes, didn't she, for the satellite? And Helena's like, yeah, she did. I hid the codes in your Hypnos and my Hypnos. Like, I split them across the two. And there's like a beat, and then she's like, do you want to know why we had an evil satellite up in space? Like, do you want to know why that was there? It's because of you, Dick. Like, you kept on, I know you hated being in Spiral and you hated giving up Nightwing and all that. You didn't want the world to know your secret identity. I was going to give you the option at some point, if you really couldn't do Spiral anymore, that we would activate that satellite and it would be able to wipe the world of knowledge of your secret identity. That was the plan. And that's why you had part of the codes and I had part of the codes. So that way we couldn't just do it willy-nilly. It had to come as a mutual beneficiary here. But clearly that didn't work. And eventually you hear screaming from the other side of town. Grayson and them go out to check what it is. They're screaming about a giant bat. And then from the rubble comes a voice saying, well, you guys made quite the mess. Lucky for you, the real Robin is here to fix it. And in comes Damian with his giant dragon bat, Goliath. If you don't know what Goliath is, go read Robin, Son of Batman. Yeah. I'll be honest, I didn't expect another calm before the storm. I know that we still have, 6 issues after this one to get through the rest of this plot, but it did feel to me very final act. It felt like we were just going to keep building and building and building. And don't get me wrong, Mother having the codes is definitely a problem. It's definitely a thing that is a major issue, but I don't know, I kind of expected it to just kind of all snowball together. So I like it. I think it's fine. I will say that I told the story from one plot and then another plot, very separated. The story intertwines them. It keeps jumping back and forth. And usually I don't have a problem with that, but this one, for whatever reason, it was really distracting. It was really distracting and cutting between the plots over and over again. There's no good way for me to really describe it besides that. It just, every time that I felt like we were making progress on one, and it might also be that we split it across too many locations. We had the Red Hood fight, we had Red Robin down in the basement, we had Helena in the elevator shaft, and we had Grayson fighting Poppy, on top of the gymnasium stuff as well. It might have just been a bit too many spots that things were going on in, but I don't know, to each their own. Maybe it works for everyone else. For me, though, I gotta say this one is probably just a flat 7. It's okay. It's not bad. It's just the end of this particular segment leading into what I guess will now be the actual real final third act. So, yeah, we'll see how that ties out. But Damian's here. That's neat. 7. And that's it. That is all the comics that were put out by DC Comics this February 17th, 2016. And I will remind you of this next week. Big thing, definitely need to pay attention to. We are changing up our schedule. I have done this once, twice, I can't recall. I've done this before on this show, where because we're on a 10-year delay, and I really want to keep this show coming out on the day that the books were actually physically released into stores, leap years mess with me. Every 2 years, I have to adjust whether I'm on a Monday or a Tuesday. Currently, we're releasing new episodes every Tuesday. However, in 2 weeks, once leap year happens 10 years ago, we're going to be switching over to Mondays. So in terms of the channel releases, for anyone who pays attention to the YouTube, as you should, we have a Comics from the Multiverse release midday on Sunday, midday for Americans at the very least, and then we have a new episode of my show on Mondays. That's how it'll be until the end of this show in 3 months. And God, that is barreling down on me. I cannot believe it is that soon. Anyway, let me tell you what we got coming out next week. Next week, we have 14 comics, one of which is double length, so not going to have a lot of time for niceties, but we'll do our best. We have, in roughly alphabetical order, Aquaman, Cyborg, Deathstroke, The Flash, Grayson, Justice League 3000, Suicide Squad Most Wanted, Deadshot, and Katana, Superman, Superman/Wonder Woman, Superman Lois and Clark, Teen Titans, and We Are Robin. It's weird how I look at that list and I see that there is a double-length comic of Suicide Squad Most Wanted, and yet my stomach still recoils at Teen Titans. I think we have a brand new writing team now, so it might not be that bad, but it might be worse. It might be worse. So yeah, that's really going to do it for me. If you have any comments on any of the comics that I talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and put them down in the comments of this YouTube video. That's what they're there for. Share your thoughts. Voice of the people, blah, 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 all that crazy stuff. However, if you are listening to this through anything besides YouTube, I don't understand how, because I haven't uploaded one of those in a while. I am very bad at keeping the audio feed up to date. But you are more than welcome to come over to our Discord or our subreddit or our Patreon. I recognize that now 2 out of those 3 options are now not great because of recent revelations with Discord. As soon as we can get another alternative, I will let you know. Hopefully it happens in the next 3 months. But until then, all that is in descriptions or show notes. Check them out. So that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is consuming this podcast. Be sure to interact with it in a nice, gentle, positive way because I'm a frail little boy and I need my feelings confirmed as valid. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.